Scared to Death by Don Cronk. The phone on the bedside table rang several times before a sleepy hand made its way clumsily in the dark towards the receiver. A voice on the other end, gasping in a raspy voice into the earpiece of the listener, said, "Is this Peter Finch?" "Yes, this is Peter Finch," he replied sleepily. "Is this Peter Finch of number 11 Stanley Street, Scarborough?" "Yes, of course," said Peter, becoming irritated. "Who is this? What the devil time is it?" "The devil indeed, Peter. That just might be where you're headed. You see, I saw someone take a bundle from the boot of their car last night, and being a curious sort, I followed that person up Scarborough Beach. It was there that I watched that person burying the bundle, and I must hand it to you, Peter." The caller sucked in a deep, wheezing breath of air, and then coughed uncontrollably into the mouthpiece. "It was very clever how you planted that bush over the buried subject. Now, I don't suppose anybody would ever know which bush the bundle is under, but I know which one it is, and being that you might not want anyone else, how should I say, nosing around? It might be to your advantage if I said nothing to anyone. You get my drift, Peter? Now I'll get back to you real soon, like, and, oh, by the way, Peter, the time is 3:30 in the morning. Goodbye for now, Peter, and pleasant dreams." The line went dead. Peter replaced the receiver and turned on the reading light on the bedside table. After checking the time, he sat up. "There's just no end of that woman," he said out loud, as he had a habit of talking to himself and answering as well. His stepmother, Valerie, had married his father 3 years earlier. Her constant nagging at his father to get a job had driven him away. He simply walked off one day, leaving 15-year-old Peter at the mercy of Valerie's irritating nature. Peter was a gifted pianist by nature. It was Valerie who took great pleasure setting him up for piano recitals and functions he would rather have missed. But she, knowing the proper etiquette and protocol, had taken it in her fashion to organise such events as to put him on a pedestal. At first, he rather enjoyed the spotlight. But what in the beginning stroked his ego soon stifled his breathing. She never gave him a free moment to himself. She was always there preparing his next performance with a wave of her hand, telling him how much he would enjoy it. He had no private life. She saw to that. If he brought a girl home, she would be subjected to Valerie's barrage of questions. Anyone who did not measure up to Valerie's expectations was encouraged to graze elsewhere. To her grave, Valerie had nagged him, and even now, from the grave, she was reaching out for him, grabbing his stomach and twisting it until he could taste the bitter bile stinging his tongue. She was like an infection that was resistant to all strains of inhibitors. She had been dead for 3 glorious days. Whacking her on the back of the head with a hammer was the easy part. Getting her fat carcass into the boot of the car was an exercise of monumental proportions. He was certain the beach had been deserted when he drove the car off the main road. Then who was the caller on the phone? What would he want to remain silent? Did he dare trust the man? Too many questions were crowding into his brain all at once. All were crying out for a priority position of consideration. The doorbell downstairs cast a hollow ring in the dead of the night. He must have dozed off, but now he was awake and alert. He would have to be careful who he talked to and what he said. In a few days, he would board a plane for Brazil and disappear, leaving Valerie and all of her obnoxious friends behind. As for the phone call, he must have dreamt it. After all, he was a junior fiction writer with an overactive imagination. That was it. Surely it was a dream. He was certain no one had seen him on the beach. Peter rolled out of bed and made his way downstairs to answer the persistent ringing of the front doorbell. He rubbed his hands quickly through his thick red hair, trying to get himself into a full state of consciousness. He opened the chained door cautiously. There on the doorstep sat a brown box. He unhooked the chain on the door, knelt, and picked it up. Holding the box at arm's length, he scanned the front yard, which was illuminated by 2 streetlights. There was no one around. Taking the box into the kitchen, he placed it on the workbench and began slowly opening it. The shock that overcame him was nauseating. In the box was a hand with a diamond ring on one finger. It was Valerie's ring. Clasped in the forefinger and thumb was a piece of paper. Peter gingerly removed it. The handwriting was illiterate. It looked familiar, but he wasn't fully awake to remember where he had seen it before. He read the note aloud. Peter. Good morning to you. I hope I didn't surprise you to muck with this precinct. You should be happy I didn't send the whole cause. I would need a hug box for that woman, I can tell you. On second thought, I might send the call to the Copers. Unless you were to pay me, let's say, $100,000 by 5 o'clock this evening. I'll call you and let you know where to leave the money. Peter was sweating excessively when he crumpled the note and threw it into the bin. He walked back to the box, studied it, then returned to the bin, retrieved the note, and placed it in the box alongside the grotesque hand. He had to dispose of the evidence. But where this time? It must never be found. What sort of animal would send such a thing? Where was he going to find such a large amount of money? His heart was pumping, and sweat was pouring out of every pore in his body. He had to get away to think, to devise a plan of action to rid himself of this leech. Peter left the house, carrying the box in a plastic bag. An early morning fog he welcomed with relief. Not many people would be out at this hour. He walked down the street towards the city. His eyes were keenly looking for an answer. Water ran swiftly down a gutter flowing out into a storage drain. No, that would never do. The box might sink, but the hand could turn up anywhere. He saw a figure not 10 meters in front of him. When they were about to pass one another, the figure drew a knife, waving it menacingly. A black man rushed up to Peter, poking the blade sharply against his chest. Hey man, do you have any money? Give it to me now or I'll do you right here. The man jumped about, glancing nervously over his shoulder and then back at Peter. Hang on there, I haven't got any money. Peter instinctively knelt and opened the plastic bag, removing the box. You can have this, he said, opening the box and thrusting its contents into the face of his assailant. The cold, hard hand hit him squarely on the chin. Its stiff, lifeless form fell down the front of his sweater, clinging onto it from the ring on the ring finger. With a quick flick of his knife, he cut the ring free. The hand came to rest on one of his shoes, where he ushered a quick kick and a step backward at the same time. Hey man, what have you done? Shouted the black man in horror. His eyeballs nearly leapt from their sockets. Staggering and falling backward, he dropped the knife. Suddenly, he tried breaking the 100-meter dash as he disappeared into the fog. I didn't want to do that to him, thought Peter. But he had it coming to him. There was no end of perverts and muggers haunting the streets. For the first time, Peter could laugh. The sight of a hand flying from a box and slapping the mugger in the face would come back to haunt him for the rest of his life. Peter heard a truck off in the distance. He headed towards the drone of its engine. As the fog lifted enough for him to make out the truck, he could see that it was a garbage truck that was busy compacting bin after bin of rubbish. Maybe this was what he was looking for. A 15-ton compactor would almost certainly destroy all evidence. He cautiously approached the truck, staying in the shadows. 6 garbage men were wheeling barrels towards the back of the truck. Each clicked his bin onto the back of the vehicle, where the bins rose mechanically. When the empty bins returned to the street, the men dashed off into the fog to repeat the process. That was the moment Peter made his move. There was no one in sight. Running to the back of the truck, he hurled the plastic bag high into the air. His aim was slightly off. The plastic bag nicked the edge of the truck, causing the bag to fall to the ground, where the box broke open, exposing the fingers on the hand so wanting to be hidden. A large, calloused hand from behind Peter reached down and picked up the box. The fingers in the box were dangling in mid-air. Peter instinctively grabbed the box. The two of them wrestled with it, but the Garbo's final jerk gave him possession. "Sorry, mate, that's mine," said Peter in a panic. "That's all right, mate," said the Garbo. "We often miss ourselves. I'll show you how it's done." With a quick flick of his wrist, he tossed the box into the compactor as it rose to deliver its payload. Peter sighed in relief. The deed was done. He made his way home, staggering against brick walls as though he was drunk. He managed somehow to reach his front door, and turning the doorknob, he fell in a heap onto the carpet inside. He crawled across the carpet, finally collapsing onto the cold vinyl kitchen floor. Later, when he woke, there was no way of telling how much time had elapsed. Peter slowly rose from the floor, fumbling in the dark for the light switch. He flicked on the light, but the bulb was too weak to illuminate the room properly. In the dim light, Peter dragged himself towards the refrigerator. His mouth was dry as a cotton ball. His stomach retched but was empty. He reached for a can of cola beer and opened it, letting the cold bubbles nourish and excite the parched interior of his mouth. He drank until the can was empty. Suddenly he needed to know the time. The only clock in the house was upstairs in the bedroom. He grabbed another can of cola beer and headed towards the stairs. Fear had turned his legs to rubber as he clumsily made his way up to the bedroom. The rapid beating of his heart throbbed in his head. He could hear the click-click of the clock ticking away the minutes. He entered the room, switched on the light, and diving across the bed, picked up the clock, spilling cola over it. Beads of perspiration streamed down his forehead. Wiping his face on a pillow, he stared at the clock on the table. The time? 7:30. He had slept all day. He lay silent for a moment, then heard the busy signal from the phone. Rolling over to the other side of the bed, he picked up the phone piece and returned it to its cradle. That explained why he had missed the man's phone call. Now, what was he to do? This maniac wanted money. He decided it was time to get away. Hurriedly, he began packing his clothes into a suitcase. Like a savage animal desperate to survive, he raced about the room. He must travel light. One case would do. He was packing in a fury when suddenly someone began knocking at the front door. He stopped packing and held his breath. The tapping grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. I can't answer it. But then, what if it was that maniac? He would have to fix him once and for all. How dare he try to blackmail him? Peter removed his stepmother's revolver from her desk drawer and checked to see if it was loaded. It was. He had never fired a gun before. How hard could it be? Just point and squeeze the trigger. He could manage that. With renewed confidence, he took the stairs 2 at a time. He rested his hand on the doorknob. "I'll get him right between the eyes," he shouted out loud. Then, throwing open the door, he issued a volley of shots that disappeared into the darkness. When the gun finally clicked empty, his fingers continued squeezing the trigger, advancing one empty chamber at a time. The clicking echoed in the cold stillness of the night. A branch tapped sullenly in the night breeze against the side of the house. On the doorstep sat another box. This time, it was twice the size of the first one. "This guy's a madman," cried Peter. "What's he sent me now? The entire carcass!" Peter carried the box inside, kicking the door closed behind him. He placed the box on the desk in his study and slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a clear plastic bag, which he gingerly lifted from the box. There was something heavy and blurred inside the bag. He held it up to the light as it spun around in his hand. His face went into shock and terror at the sight he saw. Inside the bag was a head, the head of Valerie. He tried screaming, but no sound came from his mouth. He threw the repulsive object across the room, where it crashed against the wall, coming to rest on the carpeted floor. The head rolled out from the bag. Valerie's green savage eyes stared relentlessly without compassion. Their hypnotic gaze burnt a blaze of guilt into his cranium. He wanted to be sick. His stomach automatically began dry retching. He had to cover those damned condescending eyes of hers. Running to the bed, he snatched the blanket from it and was about to throw it over the hideous sight on the floor, when suddenly Valerie's apparition appeared. A stench like rotting food wafted throughout the room. A fierce, cold wind forced Peter backward, where he crashed into his desk. Spinning around, he came upright on the other side. His hands, each grasping firmly onto the edge of the desk, held him captive. He was too shocked to run. Valerie slowly floated towards him. Her stare was solid, her intention apparent. She was coming for him. From the grave, she had returned with a vengeance for what he had done to her. "You," she moaned, her words gurgling like a drowning swimmer's. "You killed me." "No, Valerie. It was a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing." "You cut me." Perspiration rolled across his eyes, momentarily blurring his vision. He jerked and squealed. His blood pressure was reaching boiling point. Try as he may, his hands would not release him from his bondage. Then, the screaming came from his bowels. A man does not scream like this unless he thinks it may be his last. Like a mountain climber falling to his death. Like the parachutist whose chute fails to open, this scream echoes in their ears until the final moment. Valerie's face was contorted. Blood dripped like stained teardrops down her pale, cracked face. She raised her handless arm and charged forward until she was only a breath away from Peter's tormented face. "God help me! Somebody help me! No! No! No!" She plunged her cold, bloody stump into his face, smearing it until he screamed his last horrid scream. 2 detectives knocked at Peter Finch's door. Someone had reported screams coming from his house. When there was no answer, they tried the doorknob. Finding the door unlocked, they entered. The shorter of the two looked through the bedrooms, while the taller one searched the kitchen. They both came across Peter Finch's lifeless body, slumped over his typewriter. His fingers were so tightly clenched onto the desktop, they had to use the butts of their revolvers to break his fingers. They settled the body into a chair behind the desk. "Look at his face," said the shorter detective. "I've never seen anything like it." The eyeballs bulged from their sockets. The chin and upper lip looked like they had been punched in. White strands of hair fell from the head onto the shoulders of the body. The taller detective took a paper from the typewriter and read it. The shorter detective flipped through a pile of books on the table. He spoke out loud as he turned the pages of the books. "Horror Beyond Belief, by Peter Finch. Shock, Terror, Death by Peter Finch. Grave Robber's Delight by Peter Finch. This guy's some sort of writer or something." "I know," said the taller detective, handing the paper to his partner. "I don't get it. What do you think the cause of death was?" "Well," said his partner, scratching his bald head with his forefinger, "I'd say this bloke simply scared himself to death." "But we've found nothing that could have scared him. I think this bloke must have had one extraordinary imagination."